Hi there, my beautiful internet and you fantastic creatures of the beyond. Let me show you how to engineer a Mandala-lala, which is actually not as complicated as you might think. So let's go through the process. Because initially I've taken about 4 hours to get to this result through trial and error. And I did it on the Twitch stream, but I thought those clips were quite long and tedious for somebody to watch all the way through just to get to this simple result. And I'll explain why. So, let's start with our first failure. Well, our single failure, but anyway. Come on, Inkscape. Sometimes he's moody, he's like, no, I'm not gonna wake up. There we go. It's just loading slower because I have so many modifications done through it. So, yeah, whatever. So this was the first attempt. Now, the first attempt wasn't as bad as I thought, and I did quite some interesting designs in the interior here, but I had one issue when it came to coloring. Now, let me see. So, I'm not sure if I still have it. Do I still have it set up like this? Okay, there we go. So the way I did it for this circle was to create rotating copies. And that's nice, but if you're starting to modify things inside here, like creating gradients and things like that, you're gonna have a small little problem with that. Let's see if we can apply a gradient. Oops, not to the stroke. But anyway, even to the stroke, you can already see the problem. Let's try that again. Yeah, you can already see the problem. It's not going in the same direction. I mean, it's not respecting the center here. So it's going from left to right, but it's applying to all the clones as they're positioned the same. So that's a big problem because you can't control the direction of your color. And possibly you could try to tinker around here, but with circles it's quite difficult to know how to position them perfectly. Sure, you can calculate in your mind, and of course here I played with the power stroke as well. So you have quite a few things to add through this process, but it's limiting. And there are other issues as well, not only this one. So eventually I have given up on it, mainly because, well, it's nice to make them rotate very fast. Here I do think... but here I think I've done... Where is it though? This path. It's the leaf. Here it's actually not a gradient, but I've just built a shape inside it. I just created the mask and then created this sort of shapey thing to simulate the gradient shadow. But yeah, I wasn't happy about that, especially here in the interior. It's much more complicated than this. So I've given up on this design. And then I have went to this one. So the big difference is that I stopped using the life path effect. Of course, you can use other versions to create that same effect. But in this case, all I have done was to create these 15 degrees guidelines. And then I've created 3 layers. Well, this one is not necessary. This one is just whatever. So in the Mandala-lala, actually let me disable the shadow so it doesn't get in the way. So we have the frame, which is basically this circle here, but in order for me to create the leaves, I have also created 2 other circles on the exterior, just to kind of get an idea of where I want to create the curves, where I want to... It's more just for orientation. Of course, I did use what's it called? The snapping tool to be able to better organize things. And here I just created one line, one curve. Then I've mirrored it to come this way. Then I connected the two. I mean, I flattened the effect, the path effect, and then I have completed the shape. It looks something like... Oh, come on, select it, please. Oh, I can't select it because it's locked. All of it. Okay, now we can select it. So as you can see, I have just created this shape. So it's really nice. And then in the interior, well, on this occasion, I have used again a clipping mask to create this sort of shadow, but this one was more of an irregular shadow. So that's why I went for this thing. But in this case, I've only used gradients for everything in the interior. And that's really nice. Now let me show you how this really works. So we have the frame, we have the outline, and we have the color. If I'm gonna disable the color, then we're just left... Let me get these things a bit out of the way. We're just left with the simple design. Now, if I want to see better in my outline, then you see I have the main circle and clones. So if I'm gonna disable the clones, this is exactly what we have. Let me disable those extra frames. So this is all we have. One big circle, one other circle that's here from the center, this shape and this leaf. I mean this petal and this leaf. And then we have the small little designs here, like here I made a pattern, here I made another pattern, and then these two. And then I have simply cloned them, but I have cloned them manually. And how did I do that? Well, the way I did it was to create the first circle like this, and then from here to here, I've deleted it since then, but I've created an arrow or a line, and I've created an arrow shape. And then when I went with my clone, with my first clone like this, I went to the left. I have reoriented it to stay here, for the line to point to the center. And the way I did that was basically to Let me see if I can select the main circle. Where are you, circle? So the way you do that is when you create the clone, well, before you create the clone, come on, click. You take this center and you put it here. Then you create your clone, but be careful to create all the clones from the original. Don't create clones after clones or clone from clones, because that's gonna be problematic later down the line. So when I did this, when I rotated the circle, I mean the clones, it respected this center position. So everything was rotated actually 30 degrees. Let me show you. It's a bit difficult, but this is basically, these guidelines are at every 15 degrees. So the center of the first clone is at 30 degrees over here. Then the next one is at 60 degrees and so on. This one is at 90. So basically I created 3 clones. Then I've continued the process. Bam, 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 all around. And it creates this beautiful pattern. Super duper. Now that's the easy part. Now what's the complicated part? The complicated part is the coloring part. Now let me show you how it looks colored without the outline. It still looks pretty beautiful. Of course, I still have some gaps here and there, but that's because I've done this manually. But even this is still not as manually as you think. So let's go to the color and disable the clones, because basically this is the same principle as we did in the outline. So the way I did it here was, so this one has only one shape, one color. One shape, one color. Of course, I made the gradient. But this one in the circle has one shape. On the other hand, this one has 2 shapes. So they're repeating. And then I thought maybe I'll create an original and a clone. Again, I used the same idea when creating the circle and cloning it around this center mass. So I did the same thing. So they're all respecting the center mass when they're rotating. So that way they can position themselves inside the circle even better. Of course, to avoid any issues, I've also created it as a clipping mask inside the circle. So then I've continued the process. This one has 3, this one has 4, this one has 5, and this one has 6. So it's super easy. And then it's all a matter of applying the outline. Let me keep it like this. And it's super fun because then when the clones are overlapping, they automatically add those outlines. So you don't have to do extra outlines. And when you need to edit a color, you just select your color from here, because it's difficult to select it from the canvas since they're overlapping. And this is all the way to the bottom. So that was one of the main issues, is that it's creating the spiral starting from here, but it goes all the way on top of this. So this was, aside from this shape, everything else is covered. So you can't access it directly. So you'll have to go through this controlling technique of selecting your color, and then you can go and modify it here in your fill and stroke and blah blah blah. So easy peasy. Now, if I would leave it without the frame, that's why the frame is very important to be added. Let's enable the clones. Okay. So if I would leave it without the frame, without the outline, eventually it's going to kind of break the pattern because this one is all the way on top, but this usually happens only if you have one single gradient color instead of this overlapping colors. Now it looks okay because they're made in sections, but if you're just gonna go with one singular gradient, then this one is just gonna look like a splosh of a gradient on top of everything that's just patterned. So that's kind of unfortunate. So the frame helps a lot. I mean the outline, I keep saying frame because I'm looking at that thing. And then it's all a matter of adding extra details in the interior. Like this one just simply adds a bit of a color pop, the effects that I'm using here, and then if I want to bring back the shadow, you have it here. I'm just using the standard things, you see. Actually, let me not select the wrong things. So this one has just a Gaussian blur and a bit of a blend here with color dodge and opacity and things like that. Just neat little tricks to make it look sparkly and bloomy. Of course, you can go wild, doesn't matter. I just try to keep it as simple as possible, but again, you have to experiment to get the right result. And in the case of Mandala, if you're gonna just do these things a bit manually at first, it's gonna pay off in the long run because you have a lot of control over direction of color. Of course, if you're just going for the outline design, then it doesn't matter which version you select. Although you can also do it with mirrors or with section clones, like you create a clone over here. I mean, you create an original inside the clipping mask in this quadrant, and then you duplicate your quadrant in this other three. I mean, you clone your quadrant over in these other three sections, and then you modify it inside it. But then keep in mind that um, it might look a bit different because you can't create this fluidity of the circles unless you know exactly what you're going for. Anyway, it's gonna be okay. You guys are smart, and I know you're always going to create interesting and awesome designs. Okay, you beautiful creatures of the beyond. Hope this helped you get inspired, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Boy, 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 boy.